The idea of a regional music centre had been floating around for I don't know how long. It had been languishing in Newcastle, where they had committee meetings for quite a few years looking to try and develop what was then called a regional music centre. And I think it got to a stage where that wasn't moving forward. And at the same time, and as usual with these things, it's lots of things happening that come together. At the same time, there was the idea of a case for capital that the Northern Arts were promoting then, which was identifying the need for investment in the North East on a regional basis to cover certain things that were lacking in the arts and performance arts. A concert hall was one of them, as was a contemporary art gallery. So at that point, in order to try and move it forward, it went out to the market, if you like, to where could this go, what authorities, what public administrative bodies are there that would like to run this. And I think it was Gateshead's willingness to provide a site, to showing that they had the expertise and would invest that expertise as a resource to help develop the project, and that they would support it with funding. And I think that, in a way, meant that Gateshead won it. And at that point, the Gateshead solution for a site for the regional music centre was to put that behind Baltic, where the flats now are. So the idea was that we would have this critical mass in that area. And of course, that's not what happened. As we developed the early scheme, the first thing that happened was the site moved. The main thing about choosing that site was that we actually had those spectacular views on one side of the Tyne Bridge, on the other side of the Gateshead Millennium Bridge, and then Newcastle in front of you and the river. Absolutely spectacular. So that meant we were looking at a glazed front. So the design went through a few iterations, but quite quickly settled down to an entrance on the left and right, if you like, the east and west, so that you could move through the building with the glazing in front. This was actually very, very unusual because it meant that you were approaching the building, because of the layout of the site, from the back and the sides. I remember one point we were looking at we'd actually established the shape of the halls. As I said, that was dictated by the acoustics and the position within the building, but then the idea was, well, how to enclose all that space and maintain the concourse as almost like a street, because we were starting to develop ideas about it being like a public street. And the first illustration we had of that at Foster's was with a pair of fishnet tights cut and draped over the three forms. And I don't know why Spencer de Grey had the fishnet tights there at the time, but it certainly proved useful to looking at what sort of form could we enclose these buildings in. That developed into the very beautiful curves that were adopted, and so you have the three curves which express the three halls within the building, and those curves actually go very, very close without really touching the halls inside. It also meant that it was easier to bring the roof down at the side where St Mary's Church is, so that in terms of scale it actually sits quite well. The opening night, or I suppose the opening weekend, to be honest, I just remember the feeling partially of relief at the fact that finally it was opening, and ironically the fact that, well, there's nothing more we can do now, it is opening. But talking to other people have been remembering where they were at the time, and I'm pretty sure I was up on one of the higher balconies looking down as the doors were opened and people came in to the building, and just feeling so proud, very emotional, of the way people just took to it, looked at the building and were gobsmacked and thinking, this is absolutely superb, this is Gateshead and we've got this.